If you've opened Cursor, watched it produce 400 lines of something, and quietly closed the window again, this one's for you. You're not here to become an engineer. You're here to answer your own questions about how the product actually works, write specs against what's really built, and put something clickable in front of a stakeholder by Thursday. And the skill that unlocks all of that is one you already have. You know how to write a good brief. That's the whole trick. So let's turn briefs into prompts. Here's the mistake nearly everyone makes on day one. Add a settings page. Now read that back as if a contractor had sent it to you. Which settings? Matching what? And what does done mean? A vague brief gets you something plausible that isn't what you wanted, which is exactly what it does to engineers too, so this should feel familiar. Cursor's own guidance is that success rate improves significantly with detailed instructions. So, 4 things in every ask. What you want, concretely, what it should look like, and the trick here is to point at something that already exists and say, like that one, what not to touch, and how you'll both know it worked. Watch what happens to our example. Add a settings page with notification toggles. Copy the layout and the components from the profile page. Don't change anything shared with other pages. It should open at /settings with no errors in the console. You didn't write a single line of code there. You wrote a brief. That is the job. Second habit, and honestly, this is the one that changes how the tool feels. Ask before you build. Press Shift-Tab and you're in plan mode. Now it does something completely different. It goes and researches the code base, asks you clarifying questions, and writes out a plan in words before anything gets built. Read that plan. You will find things in it you didn't realize were decisions, and you can use it purely to think. Give me 3 ways we could do this, the trade-off for each, and which you'd pick. Or, before you touch anything at all, draw me a diagram of how this flow works today. That comes back as a real diagram, streamed into the plan. Read one of those as a PM and you will suddenly understand why a small change got quoted at 3 weeks. And you can save the plan into the workspace, at which point it stops being your scratch pad and becomes a document your engineers can actually read. Sign-up conversion dips at step 2, and nobody knows why. You've got the code base open in front of you. Do you A, ask the agent to fix step 2, or B, ask it to explain what step 2 actually does today and where that data goes? Which first prompt gets you further? B, and it isn't close. Fix is a solution hunting for a problem you haven't found yet. This is the single biggest shift when you move from a chat window to a real code base. Your first prompt should almost always be a question, not an instruction. Understand, then decide, then build. And the good news is that questions are the cheap end of the tool. Reading and explaining costs a fraction of generating, so ask a lot of them. Where does this value come from? What happens if this fails? Show me everywhere we send this event. What are we already doing that I don't know about? You are doing discovery on the actual system without booking anyone's afternoon. Now, the enjoyable part. Describe the screen you want, the agent builds it, and you look at it in the browser built into Cursor. Then you refine, and this is where it stops feeling like programming. When something looks wrong, don't describe it. Cursor's guidance is that a screenshot is often faster than words, and better still, you can click straight onto the element in the running page and just say what you want. This is too big. Make this match the one above it. Circle a region with your mouse to point at it. It sees both the element itself and a picture of where it sits, so it knows what you mean by this. Each change takes seconds, and you can fire the next one before the last is finished. 2 warnings, though, and they're both about you, not the tool. This is a prototype for a conversation, not production code. Say that out loud when you share it. And it will be far more convincing than a Figma frame, so be careful what people think you've promised. The real unlock isn't any one of those, though. It's that each thing you make becomes the input for the next. Your research notes feed the spec feeds the prototype feeds the tickets, with acceptance criteria written against what actually exists instead of what you imagined in a meeting.
And because all of it lives next to the real code, your spec is grounded in this quarter's system rather than last quarter's assumption. Keep sharing where your team already lives. Write it here, paste it into Confluence or Jira. And the standing facts, who the users are, what we call things, which folder is the front end, write those once into a rules file, and the agent reads it every session. Say it once instead of every time. Last one, and this one's about the bill. You're drafting a spec. Halfway through, you go to a meeting, come back an hour later, and start asking the same chat about something completely different, next quarter's roadmap. Is that cheap or expensive? And there's a second half to the question. What does it do to the quality of the answer? Expensive, and worse than expensive, less accurate. Here's the mechanism, and it's the only technical thing in this video. Every time you send a message, the entire conversation goes back to the model. So, a long off-topic thread is something you pay for on every single turn, not once. And that spec you're no longer talking about is still sitting there, quietly influencing every answer about the roadmap. So, one thread per topic. New topic, new chat. It costs you nothing and it makes the answers sharper. 3 more, quickly. Don't paste a whole document when a pointer will do. The agent can go and read the file itself, and it'll only read the parts it needs. Ask for a plan before anything big, because the expensive mistake is a wrong build, not a plan. And use a cheap, fast model for the typing. A prototype screen or a documentation edit does not need the most expensive model in the list. Save that one for the thinking. So, write briefs, not wishes. Ask before you build. Point and screenshot instead of describing. One thread per topic, and let each thing you make feed the next one. You don't need to write code to get real answers out of your own product. You need to ask well, and you already know how to do that. Thanks for watching.